Okay, last demonstration video. This is Amber. So something that I never mentioned before is when you first start out walking and you're zoomed all the way in and trying to position yourself on top of the worm, there's this animation that the worm does where part of his body just gets in front of the camera and covers you almost completely. And there's an urge to panic and twitch around a little just because you can't see yourself. But just realize that his body will move out of the way and you will have time to see where you actually are before he does his spit animation. And this will make more sense when I zoom in and kind of point out what I'm talking about. Kind of like the bottom section of your screen gets covered up. So I normally do this.
User entered your channel.
Yep. Husks 1330. So 1150 is the next Husk attack. And the reason I keep track of this so diligently, not so important anymore, is before I really knew all the timings, before I really knew all the timings, I'd have to make sure that my Obsidian Flesh was off cooldown by the time the next Husk attack came out. So I'd use it to let me know when I can use Obsidian Flesh to block the spit animations. But I don't really use that too much anymore. Oh, someone picked up my shield. That's no good. Which means I'll use Mistform for that. I was thinking about using Conjure Earth Shield again, but I don't think I had enough time. Okay, so after I dodge out of the way and get back into position, I'm going to try to point out what I was mentioning earlier about having your screen covered up. We'll see if it shows up. Okay. Sometimes that happens at Amber, where I was expecting Husk, but it didn't come out. $11.35. So hold on. That should make it $9.50. $9.50 for the next Husk attack. Do I have this? Yes. Cooldown on this is 30 seconds. So I basically look at the cooldown on my Conjure Earth Shield to know whether or not the shield on the ground can be used again. Fairly straightforward. Just whether or not that's around 30 seconds or less on the cooldown. I think I said 950. Yeah, let's go with that. As you probably noticed by now, I tend to walk forward and dodge back into the worm. Mostly because mobs tend to spawn behind, so that's so I minimize my chances of attracting mobs. Of course, if I see mobs around, I might move toward another position and dodge back into the worm. But I always dodge back into the worm. Gives me the most time to set up. I considered using Obsidian Flesh, but looked at the timer. need it very soon for the next husk. Very soon, as in now. 9:50. Next is hold on. So there's this. Right there, his body gets in front of you. That is very disconcerting when you first start out, but just know that you can actually wait for it to go away, and you'll still have time to position yourself a little bit, like a second or two. Okay, well, what is it? 9:50. That puts us at 8:10. 8:10 for the next husk attack. I tend to have my chat box be set to just combat. I don't want chat to distract me. I used to make use of the combat log to tell me what happens, whether or not I successfully blocked or reflected. Well, just blocked. So, yeah, just combat, nothing else. Ignore all other chat. There's a one to my lower left, so I walk to the upper right. Excuse me. One last thing I really wanted to mention after this. $8:15, call it 8:10, which means we're at 6:30. 6:30 for the next husk attack. So I heavily make use of the invulnerability message that comes up to tell me what I blocked and whether or not I blocked it successfully. I know some groups out there tend to have multiple people doing the blocking, and when that happens, it's really hard to tell what was blocked without looking at actual projectiles. And moreover, yeah, you basically cannot tell sometimes whether or not you blocked eggs or husks, which makes it really risky, actually, in my opinion. So while you have that redundancy, it's less clear what needs to be blocked next. Because part of the magic that makes this work is having swirling winds ready for the eggs. And if you don't know whether or not eggs or husks are coming out, you will sometimes run into trouble. Well, I think those guys either killed that veteran worm or dragged it away. Either way, I seem free now. 6:30. So let me show you that again, what I mean by the getting in your way. After this. So you dodge in, you zoom in, you want to get into position, but his body blocks your view. But it's not too big of a deal, honestly. Just know that his body will go away, and that you will have time to orient yourself before the next projectile attack comes.
I summon the power of Melandra.
Pick that up. Just because I know it's going to disappear soon. Because I know the Earth Shield cooldown is over. I already forgot the time I said earlier. I looked at it and I said it, but I really wasn't paying attention to it. Oh well. Anyway, I believe a small spin comes out, and then after that eggs, but no small spin, we'll just go straight to swirling winds. Nope, was a small spin. Okay. Guess I'll let that through. Not too big of a deal. At this point, I'm not sure when I need obsidian flesh, so it's probably now. Yes. 450. Okay. I was going to say I'm not sure when I'll need it, so I won't use it to block any small spins. But that issue is moot. 450, which puts us at 310. And the funny thing is, if you do this enough times, you'll realize that there's actually a very few set. There, it happened again with the body in my way, but not a problem. Anyway, I was saying, if you do this enough, there's actually very few schedules as the worm goes by, and you just kind of get used to knowing which situation you're in. If you look at all 3 videos, basically every single time the first Husk attack came out at 1330. Now that doesn't always happen. It just happened to be, just happened to line up in this case. But yeah, 1330 is one of the few patterns of the first. Oh shoot! Those are eggs, which means husks are coming out, which means they are getting through. No, they're not. Can't block this because I need my shield for the husk attack. Come on, be ready. Whew. Okay, 3 exact. That was actually pretty close. Wasn't sure I'd get that. Okay, so actually, this is kind of a more advanced point, which I'll go into. Great, that's who's looking at me. I didn't really block everything. Well, I blocked the projectile spit, but the attack from the Red Ranger Gorm hit me. So there is a pattern to the worm attacks, and by pattern I mean sequence of husk attacks versus egg attacks. But as the event goes by, and if you do not enter any burn phase, that pattern will slowly drift out of synchronization. And what happened earlier was, hold on, let me put this up. Nope, that was a mistake. Whatever. And what happened earlier was the husk attack and the egg attack got reversed. So I was expecting husks when eggs came out, which threw me off a little bit. But that's technically, I missed it. Those are eggs. I missed eggs. Not sure how. Let's recalibrate. Stand right there. Husks should be coming out. Okay. So no more husks because not enough time, and I believe one more egg attack. So what I was saying earlier, the pattern basically went off, but in a real attempt, or when you're actually trying to kill the darn thing, that's never going to happen because you're going to get multiple burn phases, and they tend to reset the pattern and any drift that occurs. So, yeah. Only happens when you're practicing and you actually make it this far without any issue.
User disconnected
And
from
yeah,
your
that's
channel.
basically it. Solo blocking at Amber. I think that's it actually. No more spit. Well, no, there's a small spin, which I'll try to take out. Maybe? That's fine. Oh, something I forgot to mention. In a previous video, I mentioned I tried to block the small spin as late as possible, and my visual cue for doing that is That scared me. Thought I was gonna miss something. My visual cue for doing that is you'll notice the worm kind of twirls up in a counterclockwise motion, and I basically activate my skill when it's at 12 o'clock. So when the worm's body so it's going this way and it hits 12 o'clock, that's when I activate my skill. And then it's gonna twirl over about, right here, and around then that's when the projectiles get released, and at that point I should still have invulnerability.